It's the Superhuman Television Show, your guide to living beyond 100 years in good health. Now, here's your host, Carl Lanore and Tony Vanetti.
Welcome back to another great episode of Superhuman Television. We're still on the air, so we must be doing something right. We appreciate your time here on WBNA. I am Tony Vanetti. You may have heard of me on radio and television in town for almost 22 years. You can listen to my show on 790 AM, which is a sports show. And Carl, you cover a little bit bigger wide range than I do. You're on. You have listeners in almost every single state.
Listeners in every state and pretty much every continent of the United States of the world. I'm sorry. Superhuman Radio has been on the air for almost 9 years now.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and it's
sending the message we're going to try to give you
just like
again
this.
Today.
A lot of the stuff we talk about here, we talk about on the radio show as well. And I want to mention one thing before we start the show.
Okay.
I want everybody to be very, very open-minded today. We're going to be talking about something that's contrary to everything that you've heard before and you hear every single day. So don't immediately discount what we're talking about today. Just be a little open-minded.
Okay, here we go. This is where I knew this was going to be a fun show because we're going to go in this direction. And this is not groundbreaking, but it is interesting because it's something you put here. Okay, it's something that you eat, and that again is going to really tell you, how you feel is what you put here. And this is we're going to start with this topic of, and everybody's going to understand this because this is kind of widespread now. Wheat.
Yes, we're going to talk about two different grains today. We're going to talk about wheat and corn. These are the two most popular grains consumed in the United States today. It's estimated that wheat and corn, in one way or another, make up almost 70% of the American diet today. Shocking.
It really is.
And a lot of people will say, but I know that they're healthy because the bag of bread says
100% whole wheat.
Whole grain. It'll say whole grain.
Okay.
And then it'll say heart healthy on it as well.
Yes.
And so people will consume these. So let's start, first of all, with the basic premise of evolution just for a second.
Okay.
Wheat and corn are seeds. Everything on this planet, from fauna to flora, has one objective, and that is live long enough to have offspring. And seeds are no different. Plants are no different. Plants, the seed is the DNA, the genetic material, to make sure that the plant has offspring.
Yes.
Animals and humans, we can fight, we can bite, or we can run to protect ourselves.
Yes, sir.
But plants can't run, they can't fight, and they don't bite. So what plants do is they empower their seeds with poisons. These are called anti-nutrients.
Okay.
You've heard of some of these recently. They've become very popular. Gluten.
Yes.
You hear everybody talking about, gluten-free. And that's because it's very valid. High gluten diets cause a series of disorders, including irritable bowel syndrome, ulcerative colitis, ulcers in general, celiacs disease. They're linked to rheumatoid arthritis, blah, blah, blah. The list goes on and on.
Right.
So these seeds are protecting themselves by increasing the concentration of things that keep other animals and humans from eating them. And here's a perfect example. Soy. I went to a symposium several years ago that based this premise that soy contains phytoestrogens, not because soy wants to help menopausal women feel better, but because animals that eat soy, the males, their estrogen levels go up.
Right.
Their reproductive hormones go down. They have fewer babies. They wipe themselves off the planet. Soy wins. This is exactly why
half
seeds,
the thing in the you're talking about half the stuff that's in the grocery store right now.
Yes, and this is what people need to understand. These have always been alternatives to real food, and we'll talk about this in the second segment.
Okay.
But what people need to understand is that nature provides plants with a protective mechanism in its seeds, and it's designed to keep animals and humans or anything from preying upon it.
Yes, and what you're talking about is I know so many people at this point that have gone wheat-free and or gluten-free, okay? My sister's house is gluten-free, the entire house. Yes,
what do they say when they do it?
They feel fantastic after they stop eating that food. I have a coworker that stopped with the wheat, and she lost all her weight. Not that she was big, but she lost all her weight and feels fantastic. She looks like she's 25 years old. She stopped eating wheat. Her digestive system was so screwed up, and then she stopped eating wheat. She's 40-something years old. She's with us, and we get this far down the line, and you've eaten something your entire life, and they're saying, hey, just take wheat out of your diet.
And Tony,
that's it?
Tony, I'm Italian. You're Italian.
Yes.
We love pasta.
Yes.
I don't eat pasta anymore.
Oh.
I don't eat pasta anymore. I eat spaghetti squash instead.
Yeah.
But I don't eat pasta anymore because I know it's just not good for me. What happens when you eat a big bowl of pasta?
Oh, you feel bloated. You're sitting there, can't move.
Right?
Can't move.
But people still go to it because a lot of us grew up in with ethnic backgrounds where grains were a major part.
Yes.
Corn is another one.
Yes.
Do you know what they feed cows?
Look, at this point, I don't even know what to buy at the grocery store anymore. Are you like me? You're sitting right now at your couch and you're thinking, now I don't know what to buy. Do I buy if I go in the bread aisle, Carl, what am I doing?
You shouldn't be in the bread aisle.
What do you mean I shouldn't be in the bread aisle?
You should run through the bread aisle.
I should not go into the bread aisle.
No,
that's great news.
Don't eat bread.
I can never eat toast?
No.
I don't.
No, you can eat it once in a blue moon. Okay. I'm being facetious. But it shouldn't be the major portion. I have
children.
It should not be the major portion of your diet.
I have children. What am I supposed to do? No bread in my entire house?
They can live without bread.
All right.
They can live without bread.
All right.
Believe me.
All right. I'm going to go home and tell my kids.
We're going to talk a little bit about corn when we come back too, because it's important discussion.
Yes,
especially
I want to
for those
talk about
people
corn.
who are fighting obesity. You're listening to Superhuman Television. I'm sorry. I'm not supposed to point at the camera anymore. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Superhuman Television back after this. I'll point it for you.
Superhuman Television will return after these messages.
Your body knows what it wants. It wants to feel stronger, work harder, act faster, and think sharper. Give your body more nutrients, more antioxidants, more protection, more of what it wants. Try Live On Lab's liposomal vitamin C today, risk-free, and give your body the nutrients to support your overall health, without jitters, without side effects. Order online at liveonlabs.com.
Welcome back to Superhuman Television. I am Tony Vanetti, Carl Lanore. We're talking about wheat and corn, and really,
I want to talk about corn
should not be eating wheat.
Well, no, we're going to get into wheat even deeper because there is a way for you to eat some wheat.
Okay.
Okay.
But first,
corn.
Why was it an alternative food?
No, corn first. I want to talk about
corn.
First.
Go. I'm sorry.
What people need to know about corn is this: if you are fighting against your waistline and you want to lose weight,
right?
Corn should never be in your diet.
Corn on the cob?
Zero.
Okay.
And think about this. Do you know what beef farmers feed cows for 3 weeks leading up to slaughter?
Corn?
Nothing but corn.
Right.
And cows gain 3 pounds of fat a day. So if you're fighting against your waistline and you're trying to find ways to lose weight.
Sometimes it's as simple as that. You know what they feed cows to get them fat? Corn. Don't eat that.
That's it. If you don't want to be fat, don't eat corn. But to your question.
It's not that good of a food either. I like corn on the cob, but I don't love it.
No.
All right, and you know what? By the way, to make corn on the cob even better, what do? You put butter on it.
Yes. Just eat the butter. You're better off.
Just eat the butter.
You're better off. Okay, so you asked me why alternative food.
Yeah, why is it an alternative food?
Because back in the day, and we're going back to let's say caveman days, okay?
Okay, that's a long time
It was very,
ago.
very difficult. Eating grains required a lot of preparation. They had to soak it, they had to grind it, they had to mill it, they had to do all these things.
Right.
A lot of times they didn't have the machinery we have today. So they only ate those things when sheer famine was facing them.
Okay.
Otherwise, they ate animal proteins and green vegetation that they could pull out of the ground that was easy, weeds. They could eat that stuff easily.
Right.
They couldn't eat grains. They couldn't eat wheat. They couldn't eat, I was going to say soy. We're not talking about soy today. They couldn't eat corn because it takes preparation. It takes cooking. It takes grinding. Mm-hmm. So the only time they ate that stuff was, okay, we're going to die. We have to eat something that we know won't kill us.
Okay.
Let's eat this stuff here.
Okay.
And then we were faced with expansion of populations. Early Roman times, people made bread because they were poor. The governments had to find ways to, well, how do we help people?
They needed something to feed all these people.
There was an alternative for real food. What were the people who had the ability and had the wherewithal eating. Were they eating bread? No, they were eating pheasant, they were eating deer, they were eating elk.
Well, and most people lived where? On the coast, where they pulled fish out of the sea and they ate fish.
Right.
Yeah, everyone lives on the coast, but then they started to migrate inside into the land, and boy, there's a lot of land to farm.
So this is why I say that these types of grains, corn and wheat especially, are alternatives to real food. You shouldn't be eating them as your primary objective. But now you're probably thinking, but why are we being told to eat them in such large amounts? Because if you look at the food pyramid, it says that the whole base of our diet should be cereal grains.
No, that's right. It says that.
Guess what? 2 crops the American government invests in to the greatest degree.
I don't know. I think you're going to tell me, though.
Wheat and corn.
Hello.
So why would the government come out and tell you not to eat something that would end up causing them to lose their investment?
Because there's lobbyists jacking around with us for 60 years. When did the food table thing came out? That was like 19...
Why is the government even in our pantry? Why are they even recommending
Well, they wanted to recommend. They wanted to be a good government. They want to say, here's what should be on your plate at dinner, okay? Plus, I think the worst thing we ever did to our kids was, hey, finish your plate. I think it was probably a bad thing to do. But why did they come up with a food chart?
Because they were trying to promote agriculture. They were going to say, we'll teach people what to eat, and by the way, we're also going to invest in those crops too.
Right.
What do they call that? In science, they call that a conflict of interest.
Yes.
In every other industry, they call that a conflict of interest.
Yes, they do.
The government tells you what to eat, and they want you to eat the things that they spend the most money on.
Okay.
Okay?
What are you talking about? Are you talking about people that can't, like my friend, the coworker that quit wheat and now she feels great? You're telling me you're thinking everyone out there, if they quit eating wheat, would feel better or not?
Some people may be less susceptible than others, but I would say that 80% of the population today, if they gave up wheat and corn, within 2 weeks, they would notice a dramatic difference in how they feel.
We always say...
They would also lose a bunch of weight.
When you're talking about your diet, it's always just an experiment to where, how do you feel after you eat it is a huge deal. So always consult a doctor. Ask your doctor if you think it's wheat or what's in wheat?
Gluten.
Gluten, yes, the gluten-free
There are
is what everybody's doing.
When we come back, we're going to take a break in a moment. But when we come back, I want to talk about the linkage between wheat and heart disease.
Okay, all right.
Because
Wait a minute.
this is really an important discussion. Because remember, when you look at that loaf of bread, it says heart healthy. It is anything but heart healthy.
Is there anything but heart healthy? Before we go to break, is there any bread I should buy?
Sprouted grain bread. And we're going to give you an alternative.
Sprouted grain bread.
Yes.
Grain bread. Okay.
And we're going to talk about this a little later in the show. So don't give up hope. You can still eat bread, Tony. Don't worry, Tony. You can still eat bread.
I love bread.
But there are alternatives.
I have children.
We're going to give you those alternatives when we come back. We'll be right back with more Superhuman Television.
Superhuman Television will return after these messages.
Your body knows what it wants. It wants to feel stronger, work harder, act faster, and think sharper. Give your body more nutrients, more antioxidants, more protection, more of what it wants. Try Live On Lab's liposomal vitamin C today, risk-free, and give your body the nutrients to support your overall health, without jitters, without side effects. Order online at liveonlabs.com.
Welcome back to Superhuman Television. I am Tony Vanetti. This is Carl Lanore. We're talking about wheat and corn, and we're having a fight over bread because I don't want to get rid of
we have a solution.
Bread in my home.
We have a solution.
But we'll get to the solution. The other thing I want to ask you about is the genetically. I always hear about this that these corporations, these farming corporations, are changing genetically the wheat, which is making people sick.
Yes, and here's an interesting observation about that. So we talked earlier in the show about these anti-nutrients, these things called lectins and gluten. There's another one called gliadin, which has been linked to a lot of disorders and diseases, including celiac disease. Well, the genetic modified variations, they tend to have higher concentrations of these anti-nutrients in them. Plus, they have foreign proteins that the body doesn't even recognize.
Okay.
So when you throw GMO into the mix, you're talking about run for the hills.
Why are they genetically changing it so it grows faster?
It's because it benefits companies like Monsanto and Syngenta and not the farmer. They'll tell you that it benefits the farmer. Farmers will tell you that it's more expensive to grow GMO.
Okay.
But the bottom line is it's because they're looking for ways to patent seeds. Something that before you couldn't patent. Now they're patenting them.
All right, not just making you feel bad, but are we talking about this isn't good for your heart?
Good point. So we always hear that cholesterol is the problem with your heart, fat is the problem with your heart.
Yes, sir.
Well, a good friend of mine from my radio show, Dr. William Davis, he wrote a book called Wheat Belly. The interesting observation that Bill found out was when you take wheat out of your diet, you lose a lot of weight. But he is a cardiologist. What he also discovered was people who take wheat out of their diet can actually reverse heart disease. And that it was actually the wheat in their diet that was causing heart disease. Now you're saying, Carl, how could that be?
Right. It's
Go ahead,
wheat.
say it. Say, Carl.
Carl, how could this be?
Remember we talk about inflammation all the time on the show?
Yes.
Okay. Well, wheat and corn cause inflammation. And inflammation tears up the inside of the linings of the arteries and attracts plaque. So when you reduce your inflammation, you reduce the likelihood that you'll have plaque. And these foods cause a massive inflammatory response in the body.
Okay. So again, I'm cutting out wheat and I'm cutting out corn, right? But what is wheat in besides bread?
Well, you have to look. They put wheat starch.
I got to turn everything over.
You got to. If you're not reading the labels, you're taking a real risk in life.
Right.
You really are. There's wheat starches and things. You've got to avoid anything that has wheat and corn in it. Period. End of story.
Wheat is making you sick.
Yes.
It's
making a lot. And you know what? The sickness is so slow and so subtle, you just don't feel good anymore, and you just don't know why. Guess what? Get the wheat and corn out of your diet, you'll feel good again.
This is part of why we want to do this television show, Superhuman Television, because you were told, again, this Carl said it at the beginning of the show, where the bag is sitting there in the grocery store, and it's got this pretty piece of wheat, and it says, you know, 100% wheat, heart healthy, and you're thinking, you're making a conscious decision to eat better. And not necessarily the truth. And that's why we kind of want to start to chop through some of this stuff and get into where maybe not so much. The grocery store can be, you thought the grocery store can be dangerous, not just expensive, okay, not just expensive, but it can be dangerous to you also. You got to figure out what you got to be able to eat or feed your family.
Now, so you say to me, Carl, but I like bread. What can I do?
Right, yes, I love bread.
Well, there's a couple alternatives. What we've learned a long time ago that's been going on in sub-Saharan Africa, where they don't have the problems with they don't eat as much wheat as we do. They eat hardly any wheat. But a lot of these anti-nutrients can be removed by soaking and fermenting the grain.
Okay, baking my own bread?
Soaking and fermenting. Fermenting takes yeast. It takes a fermentation process.
Okay.
But the other thing you can do is wait for the seeds to become plants. You've heard of sprouted grain, right?
Okay.
Sprouted grain is becoming popular. Ezekiel is a very popular sprouted grain bread.
Sprouted grain.
If it sprouts, it's no longer a seed. It loses that genetic material to protect the seed.
Do they sell that at the grocery store?
Yes. And you can go to Trader Joe's, you can go to Kroger's, you can go to a variety of stores and look for sprouted grain products.
What about somebody told me the just baked bread like at Kroger, do you see that to where it's terrible for you?
Terrible. Because they're using traditional high gluten flours.
Oh, okay, all right. Because they said that was healthier because they made it naturally back there, and then you just take it home and bake it.
When you make it, how you bake it doesn't matter.
I love that bread. By the way, I love that bread. It's so addictive. It's ridiculous.
You just said something addictive. Dr. Joseph Hibbelin and his group have done research where they've shown that there are things inside the wheat, and maybe the gliadin actually, that interact with a cannabinoid receptor in the brain. Cannabinoid, think of marijuana activates a cannabinoid receptor.
Yes.
Wheat actually does become addictive. You crave it for a reason because it lights up the brain the same way drugs do. Because it interacts with the cannabinoid receptor. But it also makes me feel
fuller also. When I eat bread and it attaches to, that's why a sandwich is a sandwich. You have the meat and then you have the bread because it makes you feel, it connects together to make you feel fuller.
It sticks
if
to
you just
ribs.
if you just eat the meat, then for some reason I feel, hungrier.
Feeling full was important in a day when people had very little food.
Okay, yeah.
Feeling full is not something you should shoot for today.
Okay, right.
Because we have refrigerators where we can go get food again.
Anytime.
Right?
Right.
So feeling full is not something you should try to reach.
I have 3 refrigerators, and I have one at work.
Okay.
So we all have refrigerators. That's no question about that.
That's back in the old days. I mean, I remember my mother and father saying, "Oh, that's real stick to your ribs food."
Yes.
Because it made you feel satisfied for a very long period of time because you may not have had another meal that day.
Again, we always going to recommend to stick to the outsides of the grocery store. Okay. When you get into the inside is when you start to get in trouble. Now, what about pizzas? Like pizza, you're talking.
Do you know what? I worked in a pizzeria when I was a kid.
Yes.
Okay, because I have my cousin Giovanni had a pizzeria out in Floral Park, Queens.
I'm totally shocked by that.
Okay. And do you know what the bag of pizza flour used to say?
What?
High gluten flour.
Right, yes.
It has more gluten in it than regular flour does.
Okay.
Because that's what makes it so thick and sticky and chewy and delicious that we love.
Right.
You don't want that.
Okay.
Unless they start making sprouted grain. But there is alternatives out there. If you look up on the internet for recipes, you can actually make cauliflower taste like flour. You take cauliflower and you grind it up and you either bake it, boil it, or broil it, and you can actually make pizza crust out of it. You can make mashed potatoes out of it. It's really great stuff.
And we're not just talking about, we're almost done here, we're almost talking about celiac disease too. I mean, that's not, what is that?
People who have celiac disease have a really bad response to wheat and grains.
They don't know it, or do they get that?
Their gut leaks. Their gut leaks. The grains get out. This is that autoimmune disease thing.
Right.
The grains get into the bloodstream without being digested. The body attacks it. This is what celiac disease is.
Okay.
Very, very dangerous.
Superhuman Television. Again, anything you hear, always check with your doctors, but the dietitian is always great, and we're always going to keep moving here because once, they always going to tell you something is healthy, and then it turns out not to be that, and we kind of want to cut through that. That's what this show is about, is cutting through the BS, if you would say.
And think about something. We make no money whether you eat grain or not.
Right.
So
we're not sponsored by a grain company.
We're in search of the truth, just like everybody else.
Right, the truth here on Superhuman Television on WBNA.
Superhuman Television will return after these messages.
Your body knows what it wants. It wants to feel stronger, work harder, act faster, and think sharper. Give your body more nutrients, more antioxidants, more protection, more of what it wants. Try Live On Lab's liposomal vitamin C today, risk-free, and give your body the nutrients to support your overall health, without jitters, without side effects. Order online at liveonlabs.com.
Hey, welcome back to Superhuman Television. I just want to go over one thing real quick. Removing grains from your diet can be beneficial because they're linked to autoimmune disease, heart disease, diabetes, ulcerative colitis, IBS, rheumatoid arthritis, and obesity. That's the short list.
Wheat and corn. Really?
Yes.
So what we're going to do is, I'll do it if you do it, all right? Because I'm with you out there. I love bread. I love pizza. I got a family, okay? They love bread. Are you kidding me? Breakfast without toast? So what we'll do is, we'll try this. I'll do 2 weeks without wheat or corn. Okay, I'm going to go home tonight. And I'm going to take care of it. I'm going to take everything out of there that's got wheat or corn, and we'll do 2 weeks, and we'll see how my family feels. My daughter loves pizza. I mean, little Italian girl. She's going to kill daddy.
Yeah.
But we'll try to figure this one out.
Let's try it.
2 weeks without pasta, she's going to really.
I want everybody in the audience to try this as well. Okay, especially if you don't feel good anymore. If you have aches and pains and groans and moans, your stomach doesn't. You're thinking about taking a GERD pill or something like that. Cut wheat and corn out of your diet just for 2 weeks. Give me 2 weeks and try it. And then go to superhumantelevision.com and let us know how it has changed you. For the good or bad, we want to hear from you.
All right, Tony Vanetti at clearchannel.com and your
Carl
email?
Lanore at superhumanradio.com.
Send us emails with questions also, so for future shows would be fantastic. Thanks for joining us here on WBNA on Superhuman Television.
Your body knows what it wants. It wants to feel stronger, work harder, act faster, and think sharper. Give your body more nutrients, more antioxidants, more protection, more of what it wants. Try Live On Lab's liposomal vitamin C today, risk-free, and give your body the nutrients to support your overall health, without jitters, without side effects. Order online at liveonlabs.com.